Welcome to another episode of Tripping Off, the trauma-focused hypnotherapy podcast. We had a great one. We had a great question, really, over our last quarterly check-in meeting. And someone asked in the Discord, which, if you'd like to join, send us a DM. We'll get you in. It's open to anybody. But our students are in there, and they ask questions as they kind of digest this material. And so someone asked a question that we get asked all the time, and I think it deserves a dedicated episode to talking about it, and that is scripting. Now, for those who maybe don't know, scripting is instead of kind of coming up with the words that you're saying in a hypnotic trance, like on the fly, which is what we encourage, there are very many hypnosis scripts, and so you can just read them like a storybook. And we have some opinions about scripting.
Some of us, one of us has a. Actually, as I'm saying that, it's like I don't know if either one of us is more opinionated about it than the other one. But
I think there's some differences. For sure. And so
one of us is certainly more violent about it.
Yeah, one of us is certainly more violent and intense about most things.
I'm an 11 on this topic.
And so Zach, why don't you take it away? When people ask about scripts, they're like, "Hey, I found this script. Can I use it? Should I use it?" What do we usually respond?
Now, my emotional brain. Let's talk about it from my emotional brain versus my logical brain.
Okay.
My logical brain goes, "Let me see it. Let's talk about why you would use that. Let's talk about how you would use that. Let's talk about when that would be useful." And all of those things.
But that's not what the audience is here for. They want to see your 11.
Right. My emotional brain is just like, you're lazy, shut up, start over. That is the...
What are you doing? Stop it!
It's the most like infuriating thing to my emotional brain, though. I'm just like, you missed the purpose of trauma. And that's why, and even in talking about this, I can feel my body heart rate's going up. But I do think that an over reliance on scripts across the board is a lazy out to not deal with trauma of the individual in front of you, and it's a cop out. It is a way to say I'm doing trauma-informed therapy without actually doing trauma-informed therapy, especially in hypnosis.
Yeah.
It takes away the as we talk about in the class, the belly button to belly button connection. It takes away deep empathy. It takes away all of that stuff. It takes away your presence and your mindfulness because you're paying attention to and you're connecting to I don't know, are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah,
we bleep it out?
No, we just put it.
Oh, okay, good.
You just have to say that it's explicit.
It is explicit.
These fucking scripts.
Yeah, like it's fucking lazy. Yeah. It's fucking lazy. That's my emotional brain for it. It's fucking lazy.
Right.
With that said, I feel that that's not fair because there are scripts.
Not fair.
Yeah. And I don't think that my emotional brain is being fair to like that's like saying like I throw out the whole thing. There is space for a script. I
don't know where.
Well. I'm not going to give somebody a script.
No.
And I'm probably never going to do that. And if I do, it'll probably just be for, I'd say like, hey, you could do this script when you're at the very beginning stages of learning how to do this. Maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe.
But to be fair, also like I use certain scripts. There's certain words and certain phrases.
After all this?
Yeah, I know.
The truth comes out? This is like, there was a big thing when TikTok got banned, of like right before it got banned, everyone was telling the truth. And they're like, this is it. Like, I'm going to come out. I'm losing my audience. I'm coming out with it. So like there's a girl who like eats a bunch of food. like just enormous amounts of food. And so she came out, she's like, hey guys, I'm since it's all going away, like I'm gonna be real, like I didn't eat any of that stuff. I threw it all away. I would just show you cuts. And it was like, what? And then another girl was like, she was famous for using like a bunch of product on her face, like a ton. And she's like, yeah, I threw most of that away. It was like, I don't actually recommend doing that. I never did it. This is like the gotcha moments. Like, you use a script?
Well, it's not that. There's certain things that in phrases and inductions that I get I use a lot.
Yes.
So I wouldn't say that it's an actual script, but somebody could argue that it's not fair for me to say I hate scripts so much if I really like the 20 stairs down and I do the 20 stairs down because I like the 20 stairs down.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's really helpful for me, and oftentimes it could be the same thing that I'm talking to 3 or 4 clients out of 10 in the same way. With that said, what I'm not doing is sitting there reading it and not being belly button to belly button with the person sitting in front of me.
That's some EMDR shit.
Yeah. It's I'm certainly not going to read it because that's going to engage, and this is the biggest problem with scripts, is it's engaging the hypnotherapist's prefrontal cortex. It is engaging our thinking parts of the brain. Mm-hmm. And we need to be in the unconscious, emotional, empathetic parts of our brain. And just sitting there needing to read takes that ability away from us.
Well, then also, like, then what am I there for? If I'm reading a script, like, there are some very talented people on YouTube who do it for free. If you're just going to read something that's already canned, why are you showing up in my session?
You know, that brought up in me.
What?
Is I'm working on a AI bot.
Oh, yeah.
Of myself.
Yep. Yeah, you told me about this.
And
they don't know about this.
Yeah. So I'm working on an AI bot of myself in order to have as a thing that some of my clients, if they choose, can talk to in between sessions. Now, outside of all of the ethical issues, because I've had plenty of conversations about that, talked to plenty of lawyers about that, and going to absolutely set parameters around it. With that said,
got to.
In talking with therapists about this, there's a whole bunch of therapists that are like, AI is going to take our jobs. And my response to that was...
My buddy texted me that. He's like, I've been using Gemini as like a journal. Why is it so good? Like, it's almost better than my therapist. And I was like...
Well, right, that's not good, but not because the AI is so good. It's because your therapist is not good.
Because your therapist sucks.
And my reply to most of the therapists that are worried about it is like, if you're worried about it...
You ain't doing your damn job.
Yeah, you need to brush up on some skills.
Nah.
And so...
I think there's evidence to this too. Like, I want to take a moment. This is more than just a rant. Like, this is research informed. But the biggest thing that I don't think people understand is there's such a push in our education system towards CBT therapy. Mm-hmm. And the research shows, they're like, CBT therapy is very effective. It's research-based. And it's like, yeah, so are many other forms of therapy. And there's a great study done in Europe about the long-term effects of CBT therapy, and it does not hold up. CBT therapy is great at giving somebody tools to then reduce their stress and depression in the moment, but
get to stuff.
Right.
To get to deeper stuff.
That should be the point.
Right.
But oftentimes it is not. And so when they followed up with these people 5 to 10 years later, they were kind of back into the same sort of emotional holes and ruts that they were in before, but they followed up with psychodynamic those who received psychodynamic style of therapy, and the long-term effects lasted much longer. And as you probably know, hypnotherapy is very much based on psychodynamic theory of counseling more than it is CBT theory of counseling. CBT theory would be much more EMDR sort of style. That's really kind of, even in the class, how we talk about it is like hypnotherapy is the psychodynamic form of EMDR, which is CBT form, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It's much more like techniques and coping strategies based.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then this is how the argument goes. Well, you're bashing EMDR, Zach. And I'm like, yep. And then they go, but what about the research? And then I go, well, it's not that great if you look at the research outside of what the EMDR institutes put out there. So it's like kind of biased. And when the research is they try to corroborate it, it's not actually that good. With that said, there is some good research about like crisis intervention,
Yes.
desensitizing something when it first comes up or it's first addressed. So the ideal situation in a psychotherapy setting is somebody says, "Oh, I've never spoken to anybody about what I would like to speak to you about. There's a bunch of trauma." And they can't get through whatever it is that they're wanting to get out. It's great there. Now, is it capable of dealing with the long-term side effects of trauma? And my answer is no. And the argument to that will go, well, it's not necessarily the technique. Is very much more about the person that's implementing it, right? Well, when that excellent therapist is implementing that technique, they're always going past what EMDR says, that this is your script for what needs to happen, and they're actually implementing hypnotherapeutic techniques. They don't know it because they're a good therapist. They just figured this out because they're in that hypnosis kind of state.
Right.
And now they're taking it a step further, doing their own thing, which is actually what we would encourage anybody that's doing hypnotherapy to actually do.
Yes.
Make it your own.
The problem is the MDR therapists are doing it without the 50-hour training required by the state.
Yeah.
That's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
That's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
So, scripts. I think we have to talk about even a little bit deeper. Like, there's an emotional response to it, and that's my response too. Is we had that situation in the class where someone asked about scripts, and
Jesse dealt with it so well.
and Zach's emotional brain was triggered. But this is why we balance each other out. Is like, there's things that I get passionate about, and you're like, I'm gonna let Jesse have the floor. He's got a feeling about this, but I'm like, let Zach have the floor. He's got a feeling about this, and so you gave a response, and I was also like, well, I understand. I understand why, but not why the client, why the therapist, which I think is a lot of what we end up dealing with as educators.
Can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean, why the client, not why the therapist?
Absolutely. It's not why for the client, like, is this good for the client or bad for the client? The response that I get and the emotion that I get is toward the therapist, because I don't know of a time that somebody has asked me about scripting that the motivation for asking that question has not come out of, it always does come out of fear.
Yeah.
And that is something that deserves a very strong emotional response, because, in that moment, we're killing the dragon, right? It's like, here's this dragon of fear. Here's this dragon of chaos. I'm going into a situation that I don't know what the client has experienced, and I don't know what the client is going through. It can be really, falsely satisfying or falsely secure to rely on a script. And I don't ever want to, without intending to, I don't ever want to give a therapist permission to rely on a script when they should be fighting the dragon. And that dragon comes from both sides, right? The dragon of chaos and the unknown is inside the client, but it's also inside of us. That's how I know a dragon when I see it, right? Yeah. It's like, I know that feeling. I've been there. I've experienced my own trauma.
The Namaste principle is, I love that.
Yeah.
The dragon inside of me recognizes the dragon inside of you.
Yes.
The fear inside of me recognizes the fear inside of you.
Right. And so what are we modeling for our client? Are we modeling, hey, this is too scary and I don't feel confident, so I'm going to rely on this thing instead of myself? Or are we going to model, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to be brave and do it anyway. I'm going to fight the dragon. I'm not going to pretend like it's not there. And so I've never been asked that question. If it changes, I'll let you know. But I've never been asked that question about scripting from a place other than fear and trepidation and a lack of self-confidence. Maybe even imposter syndrome. You could put that in there. And so the emotional response from me is, one, I'm going to kill that dragon. Absolutely. Like there will be an overwhelming level of violence that I will deliver to this dragon to make sure that it is not a threat for those that I care about. The other part of me recognizes that the dragon is coming out in the form of a nervous therapist. And I have empathy for that nervous therapist. I don't have empathy for the dragon. And so it's kind of breaking it down into those pieces.
Well, again, what like comes up in me when you say that is it's so beautiful. I think I said this in one of our podcasts earlier, but Thea and I went to a I don't know it's called the Florida Classic, and it's one of the biggest rivalries in college football. The game between Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M. And they're both historically black colleges, and we were in this space where it's super crowded, and there's this phenomenon that happens, especially with fear. And I remember Thea just like kind of being frustrated with me. She said jokingly, "You're embarrassing me in front of my people," because what happened was there was what ended up being a large pan that was probably about this big that fell, and a whole bunch of people thought it was a gunshot. So everybody starts running, and it was like shoulder to shoulder, and we're standing beside a car.
That can be really dangerous.
It could be.
People are packed that tight.
It was. So we were standing right beside a car, like walking, and I just kind of pushed Thea behind the car, and I'm like curious about what actually happened.
Naturally for Zach.
And because I didn't hear any gunshots, I heard the bang, but there's a reverberation, and
so like that doesn't line up. That doesn't sound gunshot-ish.
yeah, it wasn't like a gunshot. And later, Thea was like, "That was so dangerous. You can't do that. You know, like what if it was a gunshot?" I was like, "It's not." And then I ended up doing what I do, which is ended up mansplaining what it's like, what it sounds like if a bullet is coming at you because you're on this side of the.
Well, actually.
Yeah, and she and a couple of people that we were with were just like, "How do you know that? How is it that it's in your brain that you know what it's like to hear that quickly and tell if it's a gunshot or not a gunshot?" And I was like, "Sorry, we don't have time to get into trauma right now." But the point about it is that fear spreads so easily.
Contagious.
That there's people that are running that don't even know what it just happened. They just see this person running. And then they see this person running. And then they see this person running. And they go, "Oh, there must be something bad," because nobody runs unless there's something bad happening. And so everybody's sitting here running. And I think my challenge for anybody that's watching this is that if you're the therapist, you have to be that one that has enough experience to know it's not a gunshot.
Yeah.
I have enough experience to know, like, we're safe. Something else happened. Let's go investigate. Not everybody else is running from this situation, so maybe I should run too.
Right.
Because that's how people get hurt. That's actually the biggest danger in that situation, because somebody's going to get trampled.
Yes.
Don't be that person. Don't be that person that's just like, "Oh no, I don't know what to do here. I'm insecure. Let me grasp at whatever I can grasp at to give some sort of solution to my client so that I don't have to feel afraid."
Yeah.
Sorry, that was another rant.
No, it was good because I feel it.
I'm going to say to everybody, he started it when he brought up scripts.
It's my fault. That's fair.
I'm gonna run from the fear of this being my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in that moment when the student asked the question, is like I recognize the nervous student who's just in, I think, 4 classes in at that point.
And you're good at that.
I recognize the scary student, and I recognize the beginning, right? The egg of the dragon that's like being hatched here. Yeah. And it's like, we can't do that. And so I said, well, you should read a lot of scripts. And so my pivot is I'm okay with scripts. Scripts are fine, but in the right context. I think that therapists and hypnotherapists should watch a lot of hypnosis. And so what happens is, and that's the process of learning,
That's
that
great.
you should read some scripts, you should watch some hypnotherapy, both stage magic and therapeutic, right? Get immersed into the topic, and from that, you will find things that resonate with you, that are congruent and authentic to you, and then you will integrate them into your subconscious, and they'll naturally come out at times that are helpful. One of my favorite ones, and anybody who's had a hypnotherapy session with me will probably recognize it, in the kind of coning down process, the getting into a trance, I'll tell people to focus on their feet, and that they'll begin to feel a tingling sensation in the bottom of their feet. I learned that from a stage magician. He's a mentalist named Spidey Hypnosis. And I was like, that's great. You find him on YouTube. He's great. He's done all sorts of stuff. He's kind of into like reading micro expressions on politicians now and telling you if they're lying from his perspective.
I love that.
Super good. And he uses his mentalism, because his style of magic is, I can read you so well. I don't have to see the card you're holding in your hand. I know what it is because I can read it in your face.
Brilliant.
He's a brilliant guy. Very odd, but he's so brilliant. So I was like, that's great. I love that. For me, it's difficult to get into my body.
Yeah.
So by focusing on the tingling sensation in the bottom of your feet, which, the secret's out, it's kind of a sensation that we have all the time.
Just don't pay attention to
But
it.
you don't pay attention to it because it's not important. But when I call attention to it, you're like, oh my gosh, this therapist made my feet tingle. That's crazy. He's so powerful. I love scripting in that sense. Immerse yourself into it, so that way the stuff that you're learning becomes second nature and unconscious for you, and it will come out at times that are helpful. And that's for me where the stairs come in, right? Sometimes I use an elevator, sometimes I use stairs. But I've seen so much hypnotherapy and I've seen so much hypnosis that those suggestions and that those techniques come out naturally because I've been immersed in it.
Well, it creates a bank of knowledge in the back of your head that you can draw on. I want to use this little piece. I want to use this little piece. I want to use this little piece.
Right.
But what you're saying is so consistent with Ericksonian stuff.
Yes.
It's the belly button to belly button.
Right.
I can read you so well because I have so much practice.
Right.
That it doesn't matter what is being said. I can be there with you. That's the belly button to belly button. That's the foundation of Ericksonian hypnotherapy.
Yeah. And the more that I think about it, so the question then becomes, it's like, okay, so here we're in this podcast, in my head, we're setting it up. It's like, okay, here's the question we're going to discuss. Here's the problem with it. And then now we have to kind of talk about the solution. We've talked about what you should not do. And so I think we should turn it over to what you should do. Great question. I think...
That is great.
I'm very linear.
I'm so good at coming up with what's wrong with something, and less good at coming up with a solution.
Well, but I think that's part of it, right? Is by you being consistent in the way that you attack the conscious mind, it forces them to come up with an unconscious solution, and you never give them a solution because it's like the moment I give you a solution, I satisfy the conscious mind again, and so I'm going to leave you in the darkness on purpose because the best growth happens in the darkness.
But I think that's also why your registered interns like you more than maybe mine do.
What do you mean by that?
My mind get frustrated.
Yeah.
Real frustrated because I'll sit here and be like, hey, you're in the dark. Hey, you're in the dark. And I think you're I mean, even as recently as being in the class on Saturday, you're very good at saying, I'm not going to give you the answer. And so but you do need to come up with an answer. And I'm going to be here with you for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why kind of my conversation with all my interns and my students this year, and really starting last year, has been, I'm a philosopher, not a therapist. Mm-hmm. Because I think in our culture, we've gotten to this place where counselors give us conscious solutions, and we kind of associate that. And so it's like, well, my term that I use has been eroded, right? Like religion is this way, right? You say the word Christian and people are like, those judgmental assholes. And people say, oh, Muslim. It's like, oh, those scary people, right? Those people who want to harm all of us. It's like, ugh, it's a lot more than that. My term has been lost, so I need a new term.
Yeah.
So I'm a philosopher now. And the reason I say that is the conscious mind has a place, right? So here's your solution. The conscious mind has a place, but its place is in organization, not solutions. And so what I want to do with that, and what I did with this student, was I said, listen, you should read a lot of scripts. They're going to be very helpful for you. But let me organize this so your unconscious has a framework upon which to be creative and find solutions. You should read this so that way you are immersed in the culture and in the terminology of hypnotherapy, so you can come up with spontaneous solutions that are empathetic and true to the situation that you're in, not reading a script. If someone wanted you to read them a bedtime story, they can find that somewhere else. They can go buy a good book. They can watch it on YouTube. And so...
Or there's plenty of apps for that now.
There's plenty... Yeah, true. Plenty of really great apps for that, honestly. Instead, what I suggest is, like, if your conscious mind would like a little bit of direction. Yes, you're in the dark, but here's your way out. I can't tell you what steps to make, but I can tell you direction. Face this way. And I think that's what I do. And so face this way means if you're struggling with the sequence of hypnotherapy, I would love for you to create some bullet points, right? First thing I'm going to do is this. Next thing I'm going to do is this. Next thing I'm going to do is this. I don't know what I'm going to say. And I don't know what the client's going to need in the moment, because that's impossible until you're in that moment. Because every moment is special. But I can give you a direction. Face this way and just start walking. It's going to be dark, and I acknowledge that. And that can be scary if you're not used to the dark. It's not actually scary. It's just unfamiliar. But face this way. So make some bullet points, right? Find some inductions that you like. Find some stories that you really enjoy reading and pull from those. That's your solution out. And I say that because it's very well researched that is the best solution.
Yeah.
When you tell people exactly what to do and what steps to take, they don't heal as well.
And what happens is their peripheral, there's less options.
Well, there's so many things that happen. Their peripheral is gone. They trust you instead of themselves. It reinforces that negative self-belief that I am not powerful enough to solve my own problems. And so there's a host. I mean, we could make a whole nother podcast on that, of the problems that come with it. I agree. We probably should.
We probably should.
Yeah. So that's my thought on scripts, why we don't use them, and the better direction I think to go.
This is how I love that, because it's like training wheels.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we need to learn how to ride a bike. I will give you these training wheels if you promise that your goal is to not be using the training wheels. Mm-hmm. And unconsciously, that's the intent behind training wheels, is you put them on in order to get an experience to take them off.
I don't know if I like it.
Why?
The training wheels.
Well, that would be like the bullet points is what I'm talking about, is as far as training wheels.
I still use bullet points. I'll think about the client before they come in, at least for my style of hypnotherapy.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, I'll meet your metaphor with another metaphor.
Great.
Right? It's like a Yu-Gi-Oh duel. I see your trap card and I play Blue Eyes White Dragon. That was the nerdiest thing I've ever said. Anyways, I'm potty training my 2-year-old.
Potty training.
I'm potty training my 2-year-old. And so the training wheels... Well, so the first day we're like, great, we got all excited. We got all this stuff. We're like, hey, here's some big boy panties, you're going to wear. And so we put on the big boy panties. He's so proud. It's got Elmo and Cookie Monster on it. And he pees in his pants. And they're like, it's okay, buddy. Learning moment. Let's go sit on the potty. Associate this, right? Do it again. Pees in the pants again. I'm like, Pees in the pants again. Pees in the pants again. I was like, okay, hold on. This is too close. I was like, this, I think for him, and it was true, for him, the training panties felt a lot like a diaper. Yep. And so he's like, I know how to do this, right?
Already got the construct.
I already got this. And so it's like, I don't think it's training wheels, because I think training wheels, if you ever watched a kid with training wheels, the training wheels get bent because they lean on them a lot. So the training wheels kind of bend up. You remember that? Yep. And you gotta bend them back down because they're leaning on the training wheels and they're not actually learning how to lean the bike. And then it's also forcing them to lean the bike incorrectly, right? So the best thing to do we took my son's pants off, and it's been a bottomless weekend. And he's nailing it, man.
Yeah.
He's nailing it.
Maybe the metaphor becomes better with scripts are the training wheels, where it can actually teach you to do it the wrong way if your intent is not to get them done with as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think scripts are the potty book. We have 2 potty books, one with Elmo, one with Miss Rachel and Bean Bear. And we read the potty book and like, Bean Bear feels a tickle in his tummy. He's got to go to the potty. Let's go. Way to go, Bean Bear. And so it's like, there's no amount of reading that book, though, that will be the experience of him going pee in the potty and us celebrating him.
Right.
And so
the
it's
actual experience.
Right. And you see, it happened this morning before I came into work. You know, he had this moment. He peed a little bit in the corner, and he's like, oh, this is it. And so he like tensed it up. He ran over to the potty and peed in the potty. I was like, way to go. That's so magical. And it like makes me teary-eyed thinking about it. I get all choked up because I'm like so proud of him. Because it's like I would much rather him pee on the corner and I pick it up and clean it up, because he had to do that in order to be like, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Maybe I did it a little bit wrong, but that's what it feels like. And now if I can just do it over here, wow, magic.
But that's something that you can build on.
Yeah. So I don't like your training wheels metaphor.
Yeah, no, that's great. The last thing that I would like to share with anybody is Alice in Wonderland. I was like, if you can think about hypnosis, if you were to watch, I assign all of my registered interns, anybody that I'm working with on an individual basis, teaching them how to do hypnosis. I think that Alice in Wonderland is the greatest starting point for that experience.
The book, right?
Or the original movie.
Yeah, like the old school Disney movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. The new one's a little weird.
The what?
The new one?
The new one is?
Who's got, what's him? Johnny Depp's in it?
I haven't seen him.
Yeah. It was good, but kind of old original Disney. It's like, it's more weird. You know, and it's all cartoons, so like they can get weirder with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the book is even weirder.
The book is very weird.
Yeah, that's great.
Especially the first part of that movie. I assign my interns and I say like, hey, go through this and think about how you would rewrite this as your script for how to have this movie be this movie, but do it in your own way.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult for so many interns because they're looking at it at first as, I don't even know what's going on. And it's like, think about it as Alice is going into her unconscious mind.
Yeah. Of course you don't know what's going on, but you can feel what's going on. That's great. Well, there's our thoughts on scripts. Go read some, that's fine, and then throw them away. There's no amount of reading the potty book that's going to be the experience. But you have to know the sequence of, I feel a tickle, it starts to come, I run to the potty, I go to the potty, wipe, flush, celebrate, right? You got to know the philosophy of potty. You got to know the philosophy of hypnotherapy. But nothing substitutes for experience.
You have to experience it.
And don't rob your clients of that, because that's where healing and lasting change goes. And that's research-based.
Belly button to belly button.
So good luck. If you got any questions, hit us up in the Discord. If you need the link to the server, please send us a DM and let's do it. You can find us on Instagram, Trauma Focused Hypnotherapy. Also me and Zach, we're on Instagram too. Send us a DM there. We check them all the time. Or just an email, right? It sounds good. But I wish you the best. Trust your subconscious. It knows a lot more than you do. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.